Welcome to EFT Nation, your home for all things tapping. For show notes and resources, please visit EFTTappingTraining.com. We are your tapping hosts. I'm Alina Frank.
And I'm Craig Wiener. The information provided in this podcast is not a substitute for counseling or medical advice. The information presented here is meant to inspire and educate listeners, but are not guarantees of any kind.
We're going to be discussing how to help yourself or others with EFT, and not in the usual way of doing historical tapping on specific events and that. We're talking about when self-regulation, helping someone else regulate in the moment. When nervous system is out of sync, it is dysregulated, and it's out of the window of tolerance.
Yeah. So, these are the moments when we're emotionally flooding and even moving toward an abreaction where we're starting to really not be present in the room. We're starting to even step out of the present moment. We're losing our ability to be grounded and present emotionally, energetically. And things are starting, dysregulation is what's happening in the moment. And being able to help a client that you're working with in that moment, and being able to teach a client how to be able to help themselves should between the sessions, they start flooding and dysregulating because of a situation, something coming up. And even, not only teaching, for example, a new client about that, but let's say you're teaching a class or a webinar, and you're not teaching them how to deeply do EFT. You're perhaps just teaching them how to, or children to, or adults to, how to self-regulate in the moment when they're starting to emotionally flood and not be present. And we just thought that it would be really good to go over some different options here.
Yeah. Yep. I think these are just very simple things that you can do for yourself and others. All right. So let's talk about
what this isn't.
Okay.
Just to make that distinction first. So what I don't want somebody to do at home, especially, it's one thing if they're a year-long client of EFT, or I've been working with them for a long time and we've developed their EFT skills. So I'm talking for the average person, what I'm teaching them as a new client or in a class, and what it isn't is teaching them how to tap on historical or past memory tapping.
Right.
From the very beginning, when they're dysregulating in the moment, I want to teach them basically, as many would say, EFT first aid, right? EFT in the moment, in the acute moment. What do I do right then and right there when I'm really, about to walk on stage and I'm really starting to feel nervous and anxious.
Are sweating,
I'm about to have that
breathe.
Difficult conversation with somebody. I am about to, something where all of a sudden I'm feeling really anxious and really nervous and starting to maybe even tear up and, that kind of a moment.
Right.
So
I also want to say that it could look like that, like you're moving towards tears. Mm-hmm. It could look the other way, like you're frozen, right? Because we have the freeze response as part of dysregulation. Mm-hmm. So you could be checking out. You could be like, whoa, I'm not feeling that I'm here. I'm ungrounded.
Right.
So, or this could be the situation when you're in a session and stuff comes up that is highly emotional for your client, and they start moving in that direction.
Yeah. And so what I'm thinking is I want to give them the sense to have some power back and some agency back, and the overwhelm of the past and past trauma or adversity can be far too much for them to be able to regulate in the moment, as well as fear about the future can be very overwhelming as well.
Yeah.
So really what we're talking about is present moment tapping, about literally what they are feeling or experiencing in this moment to be able to neuroregulate themselves in that moment. Yeah. So let's
we say in the trainings, we say that it is as if you're time traveling. You're really not present. You're actually remembering something in the past, reliving something in the past,
and
having a flashback from the
feeling
past.
like the now.
Right. Mm-hmm. Or you're projecting something out in the future that hasn't happened yet. And either way, it might feel like absolutely it's happening now, but this is your mind wandering off to the past or the future, and the safest place is right here, right now.
Yeah.
All right.
So what can somebody do? One of the first things that I teach a brand new client is how to do silent tapping.
So what do you mean by silent tapping?
Yeah. In other words, the points and just stimulating the points without even saying out loud, because they forget the words and how to say the even though or the acceptance phrase or what they're supposed to focus on. And they can get even more and more flustered and overwhelmed by getting it right or getting it wrong again. And so just start tapping. So right now, just tap on the side of the hand. Go ahead and, the way we tap is then go to the top of the head. Eyebrow, side of eye, just silently tapping the points and just do a few rounds of silent tapping. And if they know that they can just do that, even if they're forgetting what to say, that can also start to really ground them and regulate them sufficiently.
Yeah. So when they're feeling like, let's say the issue that you're working with your client on happens to be, feeling really anxious at work, then whenever they're feeling that anxiousness, they can go into a bathroom and do silent tapping and feel ready to go back in and whatever's happening, deal with. Okay, so that's silent tapping.
So that's one. Now, they might have access, especially if they've maybe been a client for a while, for just doing basic shortcut EFT on what they're feeling, right? I'm just feeling really anxious. And they don't get all the words perfect, but even though I feel really anxious, I feel really anxious, even if they modify it and they don't get a perfect setup statement and they're naming what they're feeling.
In the moment, like right now,
in the current moment.
Yeah.
This is what I'm feeling right now. Yeah. I'm feeling really anxious.
But I tell you, as we say, most of the blood drains from your frontal cortex, and most of the time you're not going to be in that thinking capacity and saying, oh, I know, I need to do basic EFT here, and I need to. So yeah,
they might have access to that, depending on how many sessions they've had with you.
But also how dysregulated they are.
Absolutely.
So silent tapping for me, go to.
Yep. Okay.
All right, and then there's the silent tapping where you're actually using your fingers and you're tapping on the points, but there's also imagining tapping, right? Energy tapping. So imagining that you're tapping the top of your head, imagining that you're tapping the eyebrow point, imagining that you're tapping the side of eye. And in fact, if you've done enough EFT, you have body memory, and so you can even close your eyes now and think top of head, eyebrow, side of eye. Yeah, many people feel it, especially if they've been doing EFT for a while.
Yeah. And, when we look at many of the energy healing, whether it's Qigong or whatever, you'll obviously hear where attention goes, energy flows. Mm-hmm. So just putting your focus of your intention, it also really helps if you're lying in bed at night, right? You don't want to wake up your partner, you're sitting there, you want to tap and you don't want to move, right? So using imaginary tapping can have many applications, but that's a good one, especially if you're in public and feeling uncomfortable about showing people that you're tapping.
Right.
Right?
Because this also falls under stealth tapping,
right?
Like ways to tap so that people don't know that you're tapping. So another way is to simply tap on your finger points. Going back to the long basic recipe where you're tapping on the finger points, you could be squeezing the finger points. So a very subtle thing that you can do is just gently squeeze the sides of your fingertips on either side, not in the nail bed in the back of the finger, but the sides.
So the side of each nail bed.
Side of each nail bed. So squeezing the thumb on the side, squeezing the index finger on the sides, squeezing the middle finger on the sides, squeezing the ring finger on the sides, squeezing gently the sides of the pinky. And so that's a very simple thing that, you can do it and no one will know what it is that you're doing. So fingertip tapping.
Yeah, so that's a good stealth one. Another stealth one is you may have heard the concept of your point. Some people have one of the particular tapping points that are particularly powerful for them, or they just choose one. You may, for example, again, be in public, not comfortable tapping on your face, and under the table just be tapping on the side of the hand. Yes, I know it's not the whole round, but it's still going to have a result, or maybe just rubbing or stimulating or tapping your collarbone point. Right? You might have one point that doesn't look so obvious. It could just look like you're rubbing your face or just stimulating that point on your face without doing the whole sequence. And that can be really effective as well. So you've got the silent tapping imaginary tapping, your point tapping, finger point tapping, basic EFT tapping.
In the moment.
For the moment. How about orienting?
Yeah.
Using orienting tapping.
Yep. So orienting tapping was just something that I created. You could Google it. It is a way to combine some technique, orienting technique from Peter Levine's work, and tapping. So you're tapping on the points. You're encouraging your client to open their eyes if their eyes are closed.
Good
Why?
point. Why?
Because we're having them orient to the here and now
Moment, yeah.
versus time traveling. Right? So orienting them to the here and now, gently inviting them, open your eyes when you're ready. And please don't say, look at me. Okay, that's a mistake that we hear out there when doing this. No, you don't want somebody looking at you. They might be filled with shame that they're heading towards flooding and crying, and also it's a cultural thing. We in the U.S. we seem to think that having someone look at us is a way to regulate someone. It could be very dysregulating. So be culturally sensitive and know that that just open your eyes is enough. So open your eyes. I'm tapping on the top of my head. I'm tapping on my eyebrow point. Okay, now keep tapping. I want you to look at something in your room. Take in all the shape, color, texture, and pattern of that item in your room. Okay, now look at something on the floor. The floor covering, whether it's a wood floor or carpet. Take your time. Look at the different colors, shape, textures. And they're tapping all the while. And if they're not there yet, just keep reminding them, open your eyes. I'm now tapping under my nose. Open your eyes. I'm now tapping right at my chin point. And then they start looking around the room. Make sure they're doing this very, very slowly. If you see their eyes darting, encourage them. Nope, take in all of the texture, the pattern, the shape of that thing that's hanging on the wall in front of you. Take your time, really take your time and take all of that in while we're still tapping.
So that's a visual cue. Can you use other cues?
Yes. So you can say, I want you to touch the fabric with your left hand. I want you to touch the fabric of the pants that you're wearing.
If they are.
Touch that fabric. Touch the fabric of your blouse.
And just notice
while you're tapping.
And just notice the texture. Notice what you feel. You can use visual. You can use kinesthetic.
Notice the temperature of the air of the room that you're in on your skin.
Sure. Or auditory.
Yeah. Listen to the sound of my voice. Listen to the tapping as you're tapping on your face.
Yeah. And I like to kind of ask it like, can you just pay attention? So I kind of like that invitational language. Can you notice something that's pleasant to listen to in the sound? Can you hear the birds outside your window?
Right.
So you're just using enough cues to be able to have them start to come back, to be able to come back to tapping if they weren't. And this is in a session that we're talking about right now. Obviously, it could be if you're dealing with somebody that has this kind of thing happen a lot, and they just learn to be able to pay attention to their environmental cues to bring back into the present moment.
Yeah. What's really cool about this is you'll see like a sigh or a yawn often as a way that that they're going back into being regulated.
What other things can you do to just kind of shift the energy?
Yeah.
Like from where it is? How about having them take a sip of water?
Yes.
Really, most practitioners know that, but that can be just taking a pause, slowing things down, taking a sip of water can often be a very easy, helpful thing to do, or to shift their perspective by standing up and suddenly having a different physical perspective on what's happening. And they can be moving while they're tapping. They could be walking in place while they're tapping.
Or finger point tapping while
finger point tapping while they're standing and walking. So just shifting that perspective can be really helpful.
Right. Also, shifting someone into left brain with some very simple math. Like they're tapping and you're saying, okay, what's 0 plus 1? Okay, next point. What's 1 plus 1? What's 2 plus 1? Like simple math. It's amazing how quickly that works. Okay, the other one that we use in matrix reimprinting work is placing one hand on top of the other and putting it in the center of your chest, and imagine breathing in through your heart for a count of 6, inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exhaling through your heart 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you might ask, like, there's no tapping. Well, actually, you're actually stimulating the gamut point on the back of your hand by doing this. So it's a combination of heart math breathing and some point stimulation there with the gamut point. And that works really well too.
Speaking about non-tapping, in a sense, what about surrogate tapping? What if, for example, you happen to have somebody you're going through a hard time and you have a partner that knows how to surrogate tap?
And you've given them permission. Yeah. Like, hey, when when you see that I'm starting to go into a panic attack, please, you have all the permission in the world to surrogate tap for me. Now, I would say we talk at length about surrogate tapping. Go back and listen to the episode, and maybe we can link it in the show notes.
Okay.
The surrogate tapping episode that we did. Go back and listen to that.
One other really important thing that often gets missed, and we recommend it as part of that initial, what we call a discovery session when you're working with a client, is making it known what their positive, nurturing resources are in their life, so that you, as the practitioner, are aware and can even recommend doing more of that when you're doing some deeper work with somebody, and also that they're more aware of that. So it almost becomes, they forgot how much they love classical music, or that particular tree in their backyard, or being with.
Right,
so,
resources.
Right, so these kinds of resources are really helpful to make known, to remind, to help that person connect with as you're doing this work, which can be emotionally bringing things up. Of course it does.
Yeah.
So that they spend more conscious attention, spending time, especially if they start getting dysregulated. Oh, that's right. I'm going to go spend time at that tree in that place in my yard, listening to that music with my dog.
Or when
whatever.
they're doing the heart math, breathing in and out through their heart with one hand on top of the other. You could be reminding them, and just remember, your grandmother's energy is here surrounding you with light. These are things that you've already identified ahead of time, like Craig said in the discovery session. Okay, I think that's it. We've got the art of delivery coming up, which is super helpful if you want to kind of refresh and also do a deep dive into the EFT level 1 and level 2 tools. We kind of, if it's been a while since you've taken a level 1 and level 2, it's interesting how you can forget some of the actual techniques. There's so many different techniques, and we actually deep dive and tell you like when to do tearless trauma, when to do sneaking up, what does it mean to do box container and sneaking up together, what are the distancing techniques, which are the ones that we recommend to do in a first session versus a third session, what is a discovery session, what should we be doing intake forms. All of those things are part of Art of Delivery, which we teach every summer, once a year. So check it out. Go to www.efttappingtraining.com to events, and you will see that we're going to do this in the summer starting next month.
Thanks for joining us today at EFT Nation. And remember that you can find show notes and previous episodes at EFTtappingtraining.com.